Yo, welcome to my fellow Demon Slayers. Now, when they said this patch was 13 pages and it was absolutely huge, they were not joking. This thing is effing massive. There's so much stuff in this patch, I couldn't possibly go over it all. So we're just going to hit the highlights. What I think is the most important, full patch notes link is in the description. You can go ahead and look over it, read over it all yourself. But we're going to hit the highlights, the stuff you really need to know right now. So first up, they go over a ton of bug fixes here, and obviously we don't need to read over all this, but they're fixing a ton of bugs, pushing out all this in one patch. Absolutely great. Obviously nothing bad to say about fixing bugs and things like that, but obviously I'm not going to read over every single one of these, but there's a ton of little bugs here, all fixed, all little issues with the game, whether it's local co-op, different things. There was some up there for the Tree of Whispers. Here we got all the different fixes for different quests. Along those lines, there's some UI bug fixes right here. So just one after another, miscellaneous bug fixes. So many bug fixes, not necessarily need to go over, but when we jump down to gameplay adjustments, this is where the real magic starts happening. So experience reward significantly increase the experience awarded from completing Nightmare Dungeons. So there it is. Nightmare Dungeons are going to be the absolute best go-to, in my opinion, for experience. No more of those trying to find some glitch thing or try to find some exploit in the main world. They're significantly increasing the experience awarded from completing Nightmare Dungeons. Very important. That's why I said it 3 different times. So significantly increase the experience gained from killing monsters in Nightmare Dungeons. Makes sense. And down here, Helltide chests now provide substantially more bonus experience when open. So they're trying to push you towards Nightmare Dungeons and Helltides. Helltides are already pretty fun. Already liked doing them. So now when you bonus experience when opened Helltide chests, so that's just a little bit extra bonus on top of the rewards you're already getting. So right here, significantly increase the rewarded experience from completing individual whispers across the board. So I know at early game, you did kind of get good experience early on when you're going through some of the lower level stuff, doing Tree of Whispers, getting that experience. But now later game, it says significantly, so no telling exactly what it is, but we'll have to do something to figure it out. The rewarded experience from completing those. So they also fix an issue here where no experience was rewarded from completing the holdout style events that occurred after finishing dungeon objectives. So I believe that's stating any of those ones that would be like just survive for 30 seconds until you can continue to go on, and you wouldn't get any experience for those. I believe that's what they're talking about here. And now you actually do get experience from killing those monsters while doing it. So instead of just running in circles till the time's up and then moving on, it's actually going to benefit you somewhat, at least in some way, to getting experience for that. Now, moving down to general here, the Helltide roaming bosses now drop more consistently higher quality loot. So that's very good. A lot of times, I mean, you would kill one of those Helltide bosses and they would drop like one magic glove and some cinders, obviously, and stuff, but you wouldn't really get great gear. For sometimes, depending on your level, they were quite the challenge for me. After I got higher, like by 80 or something, you could slap almost all of them down, even the hardest ones. But that's good, getting more high quality loot from a very difficult fight right there. So players can now teleport to their Nightmare Dungeons directly. They talked about doing this. They already got it in. So now you guys aren't going to have to run out to the dungeons. You can just sit in town and spam dungeons over and over and over again, just like in D3 and Diablo Immortal. So they made this game more like those now. Weekly bonus caches from world bosses no longer have the level requirement. I had to sit on like 6 of these until I reached level 80 until I could finally open them. That was apparently some kind of bug that they now have fixed that will no longer be there. And just an important note right here, developer note. So I do want to read this. We're currently working on increasing the monster and elite density of endgame content and plan to introduce this change early in season 1. Interesting that they said early in season 1. So not for season 1 or before season 1, but it's going to be mid-season. They're going to increase the monster and elite density in the endgame content. So that would be Nightmare Dungeons, probably Helltides once again. So just reinforcing that they want these specific Nightmare Dungeons and stuff to be what you're doing, not finding some exploit on how to do overworld dungeon, things like that. Now, balancing changes. You think the barb's getting nerfed into the ground, I bet, right? We're not possibly going to be going over these, but let's look at kind of most of them, and we'll go down and see, is this a buff or is it a nerf? Lunging Strike, buff, 30% to 33, buff, more Fury Generation. Bash, buff. Enhanced Bash, buff. Frenzy, increase from 20 to 22, buff. Flay, 36 to 40, buff. Fury generation, 9 to 10, buff. You're getting the idea. Buff, buff, buff. These are some buffs down here. Everything, as we scroll down here, Flay, almost everything's a buff, and I'm not going to read over every single one, but I'm just noting here that the skills that everybody's using, like the Whirlwind, you notice there's no buff here, but there's no nerf either. There only appear to be buffing all the skills that kind of weren't really being used that much. Double swing, kick, charge gets a buff of some kind down here. Mighty leap, slow, increase from 50 to 70. Every single thing essentially that people aren't using is getting buffed. Iron Maelstrom, bounding slam, buff, buff, buff. And on top of that, they're even looking at the aspects for these particular builds. Bulk Catho's right here, the earthquakes damage is getting increased from these amounts to that. I believe these are like coefficients or whatever they're called, percentages. So it will now do a little bit more, the Bulk Catho's aspect doing a little bit more. Earthquake, the flat damage increase. And once again, you notice increase, increase, increase. Windlash, Devilish, Iron Warrior, all buffs. Looking down at the items, buff, buff, buff. So the only problem with getting buffing everything, and I know everyone gets so mad about nerfs, this is the beginning of power creep right here. Power is creeping up, because what's going to happen is one of these is going to get over buffed or over tuned at some point. Hopefully it's not. I don't know that it is either, but I just hope this isn't going to happen where something gets over tuned and then everyone's going to be outraged if they nerf it. So they buff everything up, take it closer to that, and then they buff everything up. So hopefully they nailed this stuff right on the head. I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm just always worried when there's so many buffs and so many changes. Looking down here at the Druid skills, it's the same situation here. Earth Spike. We got a base damage increase buff, spirit generation buff, and on the Barb and the Druid, getting more generation of your resource. So annoying. So buffing it, I guess, is a little bit of a help. I would rather just have it regenerate passively like every other character does, or the other three, I should say, but they don't want to do that. So they're just buffing how much you generate. Wind shear, damage buff, and regeneration buff once again. Same thing for Claw. Everything with Claws getting buffed because probably nobody was using it. Maul, all buffed. Then you're moving down to some core skills here. I actually like Shred. Not as powerful. I'm under no illusions that is not as powerful as the Pulverize Druid, but I really like the flying around with Shred, so I'm pretty happy about these buffs. I'm currently like in the low 50s, I guess, just finished up getting through that on my Druid, and I'm using Shred, and this is going to be awesome, getting increased damage, doubling the amount that you heal back, base damage increase from Raging Shred, and Primal Shred's bonus critical strike damage increase from 20 to 30. So Shred, that one makes me mega happy. If you're using the Wolves, you're getting a buff there on the cooldowns being reduced and the increase from 10 to 40 on the lucky hit chance. More buffs everywhere. Hurricane's not doing 17 damage anymore. It's getting a buff. Yeah, Rabies, Cataclysm, Lacerate. I'm not going to read. I'm already read like a ton of them, but just all of these, Petrify, Pummel, all getting boosts and buffs. I kind of mixed the two words together. Laugh about that down in the comments. They're all getting boofs. But Nature's Fury, they're just all buffs here. And even down on the aspects, Runeworks Conduit, flat damage increase from 1 to 1.4. See, just all this stuff, all buffs. And it even continues. And look how long these lists are. That's only 2 characters. Moving down on the skills for the Necromancer, Reap, Decompose, Hemorrhage, Bone Splinter. It's all buffs right here. And it's already, I've been reading off a ton of them already, but just, man, Bloodlands, Bone Prison. We'll just look at all the ones that are buffs. If you don't want to go over and look at it yourself, you can look at it real quick and pause it right here. But Iron Maiden, Corpse Tendril, just all of these 30 to 35 Bone Spikes, Raised Skeletons, and Golems. So this one's actually kind of interesting the way it's changed. So I do want to actually point this one out. Minions now will always engage targets with a curse. So if you do direct a curse at the pack, they will target those ones, almost like you're directing them where to go, I suppose. Down here on the passives, all buffs here as well. And the aspects down here, once again, no nerfs, all buffs once again. I haven't played the Necro, so also a lot of these, the items, I haven't found them if you haven't played the Necro because they don't fall unless you play that character. So I'm not going to be able to give you too much on that. The Rogue over here, though, all of the basic skills getting buffed with the exception of Puncture, which everybody uses. But the thing is that I can tell you for this one, my experience on Rogue, because Puncture makes enemy vulnerable, we're still going to use that. It could deal 0 damage and everybody would use it because it has the vulnerable thing on it. If these other ones don't have vulnerable and that one does, no one's going to touch them. So I'm guessing no one's going to still touch these, even though they got 23 to 25% damage on Invigorating Strike and 15 to 16 on Blade Shift. You know, that's not going to do nothing for nobody. In my opinion, I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't believe so. Barrage getting a little boost down here. Caltrops, more boost. Smoke Grenade. Still, I don't see a lot of this stuff getting used, but it is all buffs to literally everything. Rain of Arrows, perhaps. I did see maybe people making like quote unquote meme builds with this kind of stuff. So maybe this could help out some stuff like that. Volley's got a pretty decent size buff there, 30%-ish, 35. As you keep moving down, close quarters combat, it's getting a damage bonus. So perhaps there could be something with that. I think close quarters was one that I was pondering using, but I can't remember which one's which, the names on them. So I said it so long ago, it's kind of hard to remember, to be honest. But some of these aspects down here, so Escape Artist that's cut in half, the cooldown decreases. This one right here, Lucky Hit Chance, gaining Dark Shrouds. And this one right here, increased Death Trap cooldown reduction from 30 to 15 to 20 to 15. But it continues. Once again, all of the base skills are getting boosted in pretty much every single way. Little damage boosts on all that stuff. They're trying to get people to use it on the sorcerers here. So here's all of them except for Arc Lash. So you notice all of them except for the one that people use is getting boosted. Similar down here. There's no Chain Lightning, you notice, but Fireball, Frozen Orb. Then we move down to Ice Blades, Lightning Spear. I think it's some Conjuration stuff. All getting boosted. I think Blizzard was one that people were already using, but I think it was more for the stagger and then instead of the actual damage. And then jumping down to the aspects here. All of these, once again, you see boost, buff on all of those. Also down here on the damages here, these are all getting buffed. This one's worded quite oddly, but apparently this item, if you don't play Sorceress, the damage, it reduces the amount of damage you do. So, but it gives you another bonus. So they're reducing the amount of damage that it reduces from you. So it's a hard way to word it, but this is actually a buff even as well. The way it was described to me from some of my channel members and things like that. So that's about as quick as I could go over all of the stuff here. Like I said, the full link in the description to these patch notes, but this is just buff after buff after buff after buff. There's no nerfs in the entire thing that I've seen, and they fixed just a bazillion bugs. So hopefully everybody's happy about this. Let me know your opinions on this down in the comments, because this is a massive, this is like the 13-page notes that they did mention. So hey, peace out, fellas. Hit the like button, subscribe up before you go, and don't forget, keep slaying. Ooh.